Hello again, everyone. I'm Fiona Napier.
I'm Stephen Dobson.
And today we are glad to welcome you to a webinar about upholstery fabrics for contract. Today we're going to talk you through all sorts of technical requirements and hopefully things that you'll find useful in your job to do with upholstery fabrics, and also introduce to you all of Edmund Bell's new and broad upholstery range.
Yeah, hopefully you may have been on one of our webinars previously that we've done throughout the last kind of 12 months. The process is quite similar, so we're just going to go through some of the products, tell you a little bit about Edmund Bell, and give you more of an in-depth overview of upholstery that perhaps you may not have seen before, and just look at where you can find those products in terms of our online resources and our sampling, and then we'll look at some questions from you guys and hopefully be able to answer them.
So a little bit of housekeeping. If you can't already see our presentation and our beautiful faces side by side in your view, you might want to go up to the top right hand corner and click gallery view. That should give you both things side by side. The other thing to note is, as Stephen said, we're going to have a questions and answer session at the end. If anybody has asked any questions, you're welcome to add those into the chat box as we go through the session, and we will come to them at the end. And if not, if we don't manage to answer them this time, we will definitely get back to you.
Yeah.
So without further ado, now, one thing to note, if you have joined one of our webinars before, we're going to bore you for a couple of minutes because we're going to go through a little bit about Edmund Bell again, and I think it helps to set the scene for everything else we're going to tell.
Absolutely. So who are Edmund Bell, I suppose? So Edmund Bell's actually been around since 1855, believe it or not. We started out producing apparel fabrics, the liners for inside of your suits.
And then, of course, we went on to curtain linings as well, which has been a really big part of the business for a very long time. However, it was really in the Second World War that we started making blackouts and moving into more the kind of contract side of things as well.
Yeah, and in 2008, the company was bought by the Atherton family, and will currently run the business as part of a larger group. And from 2008 to now, which is a really short period of time in that kind of 13-year period, we've gone from a commodity-based, volume-based business to a decorative business where we are working with people like interior designers, some of the largest brands in the world. We're only able to do that because of the infrastructure that we've built and the products that we developed in that time.
Yeah, one thing we're going to touch on here, it's come up quite a lot more and in more depth in previous webinars, which you'll be able to see in some of the resources we'll tell you about later. But one of our major selling points, one of our big advantages, is we have a finishing mill here in the UK, and that is very pertinent, very relevant to the ranges we're going to tell you about.
It's very relevant on the upholstery side, definitely, yeah. And it is the one thing that sets us apart from our competitors, we think.
Yeah. So you should be seeing at the moment a slide that just gives you a quick overview of some of the key brands you might recognise that we already deal with.
Yep, so as you can see when I talk to you about where we've come in the last 13 years and the size of the businesses and brands that we now work with, these are just a couple of examples, and it give you a good idea of how we've developed products to be able to work with such a multitude of brands that are very different. And
different sectors, yeah. So we're going to talk about all sorts of different tech spec, certifications and other things to do with upholstery today. Yep. But those tend to vary, they vary all over the place. So they vary from country to country. They vary from application to application. They vary between sectors. So yeah.
They do, and I think if you're watching this now and you're interested in upholstery and you may work in the healthcare market, no matter where you are, we've got another webinar this afternoon that focuses directly on the healthcare market and looks at other products outside of upholstery as well.
Definitely. So actually you should be seeing a few of the certifications from third-party accredited laboratories that we have done, especially in terms of flame retardancy. So if I just touch on that in a little bit more depth, and we are going to go into this per article as we go forward.
Yep.
But basically, you'll see on there we have a German certification, for instance. So we certificate for the European continent. We certificate CRIB 5 for the UK and Ireland.
Yep.
We certificate IMO for marine settings. And this is really just an NFPA for the States as well. So we really have a plethora of different testing.
So this is really important for you to take away before we move on to the products themselves. And the confidence that you should have in looking at Edmund Bell's upholstery fabrics is that the abundance of testing that we have to do prior to launching a product is huge. We have a department of double figures in terms of team members whose sole responsibility is to make sure that this testing is done, and they are the tests that you guys would have requested of us. They're the questions you ask us, whether it's things like Martindale, whether it's hydrostatic head test for waterproof, stain resistance, all the things that you require, we cover off.
Steve and I were actually talking prior to this webinar starting about the fact that we're going to be presenting the kind of standard ranges that we have in upholstery at the moment, but that actually a really important point for us to make is these are the ones we present as standard because they're the ones that are typically the most popular combinations of finishes. But actually we can finish all these articles to any combination of finishes as is relevant to your project in terms of price, in terms of technical requirement. So that's always worth bearing in mind and always worth having a chat with us about.
I think, yeah, definitely. I think if we look at where we've come from in terms of upholstery, in terms of our humble beginnings, and if you've worked with Edmund in the past, you'll know us for our drapery products, our blackouts and dim outs, etc. But you will know that upholstery is a relatively new product, and I think our initial steps into the market was looking at, as our competitors do, looking at products coming in ready-made for the contract market, specifically in the UK. But inadvertently, through a series of acquisitions and things that we've done as a group over the last couple of years, we've got a number of UK origin products that we can now engineer in various different forms to suit your client.
Do we want to touch on UK origin just for its own sake as well, because it's more relevant now than it ever was?
I think it's really relevant, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously, I hate the B word, and we've been avoiding the B word for months now, but it's had a radical impact.
By the way, yeah.
It could be anything. I'm sorry, the Brexit word, yeah. And it's had a radical impact for customers overseas, which we deal with, but also for UK customers who sometimes sell overseas. So apart from anything else, UK origin is a really strong selling point from the perspective of Brexit. Right?
I think it is, and I think if any of you, if you're in the UK and you're anything like me, I distanced myself from that naughty word because obviously I didn't feel it would affect me so much. But actually, our UK customers, especially on upholstery, where a lot of our manufacturing is done globally, it certainly does affect. And if you're working with businesses in the UK that are constantly importing product, you're going to get hit with a duty charge on top of your price per meter. So our UK origin products kind of negate that, and it's a really good thing to talk to us about, further down the line.
Ultimately, that is the top and bottom of it is UK origin goods for the purposes of the UK EU trade agreement means no duty to pay if you're exporting or importing into the EU.
Yep.
So good news.
We're not saying it's easy, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not a simple process.
And again, we can guide you on that a little bit, hopefully, because we've had a lot of pain.
It's certainly not going to cost you anything.
Yeah. So you have seen on your screen here a slide that relates to other testing. We've talked a lot about flame retardancy testing. There's a whole rake of other testing we do. Not everything on this particular slide is relevant to upholstery, I may add. We do have Ecotech's availability for some particular versions of the upholsteries, not for all. Yep. Acoustic sound absorption actually probably technically does pertain to these fabrics, but we haven't tested them.
No. But we do carry sound absorption tests out on our drapery products for those reasons. But in terms of upholstery, the waterproof side of things, the stain resistance, the antimicrobial, all of these things that we do. And as we said briefly earlier, we've got the opportunity to manufacture these products in a way that suits you.
So we are going to touch on some more of those technical things as we come back to the specific products, but just to explain then, upholstery, as Stephen said, is quite new to Edmund. You can see on your screen the 5 binders that now make up the totality, the whole of our range. There are 5 different sections to the collection. There's workroom, which is linings and things that you might use in making the manufacture of curtains, right? Yes. There's light control, which is blackout, dim outs and shears. I think a lot of people know us for these 2 segments. There's print, and actually we're going to touch on print within upholstery as well.
Yeah, so even though print, I suppose, focuses here on drapery, and because we've got a separate upholstery binder, don't forget that within our print collections we have 3 upholstery base cloths that you can print on. So any of those collections within that print and our bespoke print offering for that matter can all be put on an upholstery base cloth.
I'm sitting on one.
You're sitting on one, you actually are.
Yeah. There's a binder for weave, which is jacquards and single drapes. And then finally, of course, there is upholstery. Now, do we want to talk a little bit more about how we came into upholstery, why we started with it?
I suppose we can. I think we say upholstery is new to us, but actually we're telling you fibs, because we've always had upholstery. When we go back to the print, we've always had upholstery base cloth, and if you work with us for our prints previously, you'll know that we've got a twill weave upholstery base cloth and our sentinel, which is it's a napped upholstery fabric, and then they're waterproof, they're MRSA resistant, all the things that now is important we've actually had for quite a long time.
Yeah, but I think where we differ from some other brands actually in the upholstery segment is, that's true, we've had them for a long time, but we almost didn't want to go out and push upholstery as a range until it was an appreciable range, and it really offered something for most settings. And
it was almost an accidental thing, right? I don't think this was planned. I think initially when we started looking at our collections and we talked to our customers, guys like yourselves, our pattern books were missing those coordinating upholsteries or those coordinating plain products to kind of work with cushions and runners, and so you get a whole story out of a pattern book. So
they actually started as part of the Jacquard's books, didn't
they?
Yeah. So we did have up until recently 5 ranges that were spec'd really for the UK market, so Crib 5 and other additional tech specs, and they were placed alongside the Jacquard's within some of our collection books.
Yep, so you'll see them in Soho Club, you'll see them in Sanctuary alongside our woven drapery products as well.
Still totally valid ranges.
100% they are. They're contract products, they're Crib 5, they're high Martindales, generally in the range of 80 to 100,000 rubs in terms of Martindale. So they are proper contract products.
But then, as we said, we really wanted to have a focus on this, and we kind of, by chance, as Steve said, got a shot at it because we ended up taking over a company that focuses on residential in the UK, and because of our wonderful advantage of having a finishing mill here in the UK, we were able to then spec them for contract for the UK, for international, marine, completely different settings.
Yeah. So not to kind of confuse you too much in terms of the retail side of the business, yes, a lot of these fabrics, that's where they kind of stem from, is they were used very heavily in the retail side of things. But going back to our previous slides where we showed you how much testing in terms of Edmund Bell and how much testing we do and how contract specific our tests are, we were able to take all of these fabric out. And if you can imagine a retail offering, it's far, far bigger than what you see here. But what we've done is taken these
those that we think are most relevant as well.
And absolutely, those are commercial, those are that will meet those test requirements with high Martindales that can perform, you know, an element of engineering is involved when it comes to putting different parts. When you talk about Crib 5, waterproof, stain resistance, you've got 4 or 5
multi-layered article. Yeah.
So it's not a simple, you can't just put any fabric together, it's got to react in the right way, and this is what we ended up with.
Yeah. So the slide that you're seeing right now shows you a quick overview of the 9 new articles that have most recently been added. And actually, this isn't the end of it. This isn't the end of our plans for upholstery. We're adding another, I think, 2 or 3 within this year.
Definitely 3.
So you can see there's a big array of different kinds of finishes and textures here. And I think we're going to go through the box, which you will, hopefully have received. If you signed up in time, you will have received them. If not, then this is still due to you, this lovely yellow box, Christmas gift. We will go through that in just a minute and go through each of the specific articles with you and talk through them.
Yeah, so I think what we've done is we've stuck to, again, we're contract specialists at Edmund Bell. So the products you get from upholstery are they're generally tailored for the contract market. So they are commercial products. They are products.
All the boxes are ticked for you before you start.
Absolutely, and I think the textures are right for the market. You've got some soft woolly textures. You've got some really soft handled velvet. There's lots of different textures in there, although they are semi-plain, I guess, in terms of their texture. They are exactly what your clients are looking for. So
there are 2 distinct, I guess, branding exercises we did, aren't there, for contract purposes, in DuraCare and in DuraCare Plus. And you can, I guess, if you can get an understanding of what each of those means, you'll know how to apply it to your particular project.
So we'll get quite technical with these and give you some technical reasons in terms of the differences between DuraCare and DuraCare Plus. But I think from a very basic point of view, in DuraCare, it's literally a flame retardant, stain resistant upholstery fabric.
Yeah. In
DuraCare Plus is a stain resistant, flame retardant, antimicrobial, waterproof fabric. Yeah. So
there's one that's bulletproof, and there's one that's really, really strong in most contract settings.
And just remember that not all are in DuraCare Plus, and I think we'll go through the differences between the textures. Any of you that have worked with upholstery before, and I'm guessing if you're on this webinar, you work with upholstery, You know how difficult it is to get a really soft handle velvet and get all of those extras at the same time is quite difficult. So we'll go through those.
So we have just said FR here. Obviously, there is a distinction to make, as we've said, between Crib 5, SIG and match. Some places actually only require cigarette testing, and even within the UK, a domestic setting will have a different certification need to a contract setting. So it really bears, I think it would be useful for you to understand for your specific requirement where you are, what you need. And if you don't know, you can ask us, because we may know.
We may know.
Yeah. And then in terms of abrasion resistance, I think it's worth touching on that. There are two main, or there are even three, I would say, main tests for that. There is pilling, which is less important here, more so on drapery, I would say, or more so on accessories.
Yeah.
And then there's Martindale, which tends to be the measure used in Europe and the UK, and Weizenbeek or double rub, which they tend to use in the States, and actually maybe other places like Southeast Asia that will use American standards.
And again, going back to our testing slide, you know, expect these tests to be done in advance. They're not going to be an afterthought. You don't have to ask for them. They'll be tested, and the certification will be there ready for you. And
they are tested. Basically, all of these things, they are only presented if they are severe contract or heavy contract results. So you can be sure that they are suitable for your setting. Yeah.
So the core differences in terms of DuraCare and DuraCare Plus, then obviously, so you know, your frame retardancy on DuraCare, you've got your high abrasion tested, whether that's Weizenbeek, whether that's Martindale, and your stain resistant finish. When we move into DuraCare Plus, you get your extras, so you get a waterproof, you get antimicrobial. So when we talk waterproof, it's generally greater than 2 meters in terms of a hydrostatic head pressure test.
What is hydrostatic head pressure test?
Oh, that's an extremely good question. So I wish I'd put the image actually in here that I've got with all my equations that I wrote next to it. But it's basically the amount of pressure in terms of water. So you've literally got the old-fashioned way of doing it was a large funnel with a piece of fabric underneath. The water would be filled up to a level measured in meters before droplets start to appear the other side of the fabric. And the pressure that's created, the more water you put into that hydrostatic head container, the more pressure that comes down, the more waterproof that fabric is. And I think
it's the same way they test things like tent materials, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah. And I think I've seen a lot of fabrics, upholstery fabrics, where they're just about squeeze that 1 meter. Yeah. And I think I would call those water resistant, not waterproof. Yeah. All of our hydrostatic head tests have achieved between 2 and 5 meters actually, but we always put 2 meters plus on the back because that gives you the confidence that it's a waterproof product, not water resistant.
Stain resist, and you'll see many different versions of these kinds of brandings and tech descriptions from other brands and suppliers, but ultimately stain resistant means, you know, it will maybe bead on the surface if it's a liquid, and you should be able to wipe it off or tap it off with a piece of cloth or something. But with waterproof, what we're really looking to do is protect the foam, protect the cushion underneath, make sure you don't have to strip the entire thing.
Yeah, it's important to remember that we use a breathable membrane for our waterproofing with our fabrics, so you're not going to get any kind of sweating, or it's very, very breathable. It's very waterproof. In terms of your clientele, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's in a hospitality setting, a healthcare setting, they don't even know it's there.
Yeah, yeah. And actually the way it's achieved is an actual full membrane underneath every other layer as well. So actually, if you see the packing cards in the binder, which we will touch on in a minute, it gives you a diagram showing you the different layers in these DuraCare Plus finished fabrics.
The last bit, I suppose, is the antimicrobial, isn't it? Which
this is the buzzword.
It's a very relevant word at the minute. It's always been, in all fairness, especially in certain markets like healthcare. And it was once pointed out to me, I think, it's fair to say this, that DuraCare Plus for a brand of upholstery didn't sit right with me when we launched it, especially as a lot of our clientele are working in the hospitality market. But actually, it was pointed out to me, if you own a restaurant or a bar, why would you not have that? If it was aesthetically right, why would you not have something that was waterproof and antimicrobial in your restaurant or your bar? And actually,
part of it is, and I don't know, we're not specifically going to touch on that in this particular presentation, but part of it is the longevity of it, and even the aesthetic longevity of the fabric. It's going to stay looking nicer if it's stain resistant. It's going to stay looking nicer if it's waterproof. and also it's going to smell nicer if it's not, you know, breeding bacteria.
Exactly.
So the key thing to understand about our particular antimicrobial finish is it ticks all the boxes that people are looking for in antimicrobial finishes. It's non-metallic, it's non-leaching, it doesn't result in adaptive microorganisms. That's another one that people are always asking about.
Yep.
I think actually there's potentially a little diagram that shows how it works. It's a physical effect. It punctures microbes. So, you know, it doesn't try to gas them or whatever. It literally punctures them and ends them. And it's been tested in third-party laboratories against all sorts of different microbes as well. So you do sometimes hear about antibacterial finishes, which of course will do nothing for your viruses.
No, not at all. And I think it's keen to kind of get across that this is something that doesn't wash out. It's not an afterthought. It's not something that's sprayed on after the fact or treated in such a way where, you know, a couple of washes and it becomes non-antimicrobial. It's actually very, very durable in terms of washing.
So it's actually been tested against, and I think we will have a table up, a massive rake of different bacteria, fungi, even algae, and it has been tested against some key viruses, most notably I think the norovirus and feline coronavirus, which is, as far as we're aware, the closest you're actually allowed to get to still in testing to coronavirus. We may be told otherwise, but that's what we know right now.
Sure, we will. Yeah. But it's probably one of the best in terms of technology that's out there in terms of antimicrobial, in terms of performance for fabrics and contract fabrics. It's probably one of the better ones on the market. And I think, you know, getting away from this kind of antiviral, antibacterial, which suggests that it kills everything. It just inhibits the growth. Yeah. You still have to care for these products, you know, so don't get misled by other information in the market which tells you these antimicrobial finishes.
They're not a panacea.
It's not a miracle.
One thing that does need bears touching on is, you know, you've probably heard quite a lot in the news about how hard surfaces are possibly the worst, right? A metallic surface, how long does it live on a metal surface, on a glass surface, what have you? A textile itself, because it's a porous surface, is already better, if you like, in inhibiting transfer of material than a hard surface. You're already winning when you put soft furnishings in. Buy more soft furnishings, but if it's had this antimicrobial treatment, so much better.
Definitely helps.
So I think we will actually show you some product now. How about that?
Let's do that.
So we have got the binder here. You saw already on screen the 5 binders that make up our range at the moment. Of course, we have lots of different formats of sampling, but this is how we present the upholstery range in its entirety.
Yeah, so I suppose if you're listening to us today and you're thinking, okay, I've not used Edmund upholstery before and I want to get some reference to that, our binders are available to you, as Fiona's got there, and you will have so when we talked about our original upholsteries that came into our Soho Club and Sanctuary ranges, they're at the front. Yep. So that's Deluxe, which is our very durable stain resistant velvet. Not many of those on the market.
No, indeed. And the other thing about Deluxe is it's very matte, kind of cotton-like. Yeah. So it doesn't look like the polyester it is at all. We've got Brompton, which is a jacquard, in some, I would say, very kind of boutique hotel colours as well.
Absolutely. I think it was quite a decent designer that specified Brompton for one of major cruise ship brands. So it's a popular aesthetical product.
We've got Serene, which is a really classic plain weave style upholstery fabric. Eureka, which is a Marl article. This goes well with everything.
It does. Ironically, that's probably one of our better sellers of those originals. Yeah. That sells the best.
Yep. And of course, all the rest are available in cards here as well. Now, the back of the binder is actually split into other subsections here. You've got one that is vinyl, where you will find Metro, which I think is actually worth discussing itself as well. Yeah. This one, if you like, this is the DuraCare Plus. Because this particular article is also bleach solution cleanable. That's not true of the rest. Because this is a vinyl, you can do a 10-to-1 bleach solution to disinfect this truly. Yeah. So this is really good for a healthcare setting, for a food and beverage setting, what have you.
Absolutely right. And I think, you know, bar areas, we've used some of the citrine colours of this on bar stools. It's very, very durable product, high Martindale test, it's waterproof. As Fiona said, you can clean it. And I think in a saturated world of vinyl, you know, they're a dime a dozen. I think what you get here is a really really good textured vinyl, something that's a little bit different from your standard, very institutional looking vinyls.
Yeah.
And this is more of a decorative vinyl product that can be used in a multitude of settings.
So, and then again, we have waterproof as a binder divider, and that goes into some of the printed stuff. I think we won't touch on that in too much detail this time because we've got that much else to tell you.
Yeah, I wouldn't go into too much detail, but they are, you know, as I mentioned to you, our base cloths are already, they're waterproof and antimicrobial and have been for some time. And I think we just put some printed off on the back to show you what they look and feel like.
Done. Yeah. So should we start with the box here?
I suppose we can.
Yeah. So we have done this before for webinars where, you know, if you joined up early enough, we sent out a box with some goodies in it to allow you to go through it at the same time as us during the webinar. If you haven't had yours already, you're probably due to get it, in which case, by all means, watch back or have a look on the website whilst you're going through. But if not, open up. Let's go through it together. The first thing you'll find is a brochure, a really lovely brochure that Adam and Amy here put together for you, that tells you all about Edmund Bell, a bit about the history that you've already heard, but also some case studies, some really nice photography. Actually, also includes some custom printing, so that's a really good plug for that. Yeah, some real good room shot images in there, some real good looks at the texture, and I think it's not lost on us that these webinars, although they may be great in terms of giving you information over the screen, fabric is still a tactile product. You still want to touch and feel it, and I think these are just some examples of some various different textures. All of our fabrics are in here. You've got a choice of a couple of different colours in there as well. So actually, here's a really good start. I think Aspen's a good one to start with because I've got the hanger. There you go. So if you can find Aspen amongst it, and maybe Amy, you can pop some of that up on the screen. We have the colour palette here, so as you can see, what you have in the box is just a selection of some of the best colours that we think are really good. So Aspen is a herringbone with a cationic yarn used, right, to give it extra texture. It's still, like all the rest of these upholstery articles, 100% polyester. The reason we use 100% polyester is partially price, partially its colour continuity and just general continuity of tech spec. It's much easier to maintain control when you general durability. It's still, you know, I know, you know, we'll touch on things like sustainability later. Sustainability is not just about providing fabrics that are natural, you know, because you can have natural products, of course you can, yeah, but they just won't last as long. And I think there's many other reasons to keep replacing those. Yeah. You know, there is still a place for polyester, yeah, and it does give you, you know, the fact that technology now gives you these really soft wool looking fabrics, you know, why wouldn't you? Yeah, in fact, so I just realised you're sitting on an Aspen chair there. I am, yeah. Yeah. So some really bright poppy colours. Spoiling the chair, actually. Some really good neutrals as well, and I guess it's a look I guess you can have in a really bright kind of setting. I can see this in a Moxie or something, or you can have in a really traditional kind of setting just as well. Yeah, cool. Right, we're having a technical problem here. I'm just going to nip back out and straight back. All right, Steve. So anyway, just to explain then, in terms of technical finishes, you will see if you do already have a binder, or if you're on the website, that Aspen comes in two different finishes, as standard, if you like. There's the ASP 08, which is the DuraCare Plus, so that is Crib 5, EN standard, IMO, NFPA, so all of the FRs, if you like, plus antimicrobial, waterproof, stain resist. So we've got everything going on with this. I think that's key. You know, some of the biggest projects we've done to date, you know, we talk about our engineering these products. I think initially when we came to the product codes, we looked at the cigarette match option because Europe-wide, that's the finish of choice. Crib 5 in terms of the UK, everything has to be Crib 5 or BS 5852 to ignition source 5. But I think strips off the tongue. Yeah, we've talked about it a few times. I think it's really key to remember that all these different things we're talking to you about, because of that UK origin, because we manufacture or finish these products right here in the UK, we're able to engineer these products to suit your end client. And don't forget that. And I think it may be that having something waterproof, having something antimicrobial is overkill for your scenario, for where you're putting it. Which is precisely why we have the second standard version for this, which is ASP or ASP 06, and that is the cigarette and match and stain resist version. So there we've kind of made an executive decision that you will probably still want to have stain resist on upholstery where possible. Yeah. And also that you're not necessarily going to need Crib 5 in every setting. Even in the UK, there are some settings Sig and Match might do, And also that particular version meets the European standard, it meets FPA, it meets IMO. So for the vast majority of the world, in truth, that is the version that's going to be most relevant. And price-wise, of course, there is an advantage. And that's, we're absolutely aware that that is a really important factor for you.
Yep, definitely. And it's various different contract markets in the UK and everywhere, really. But you've got the leisure market, you've got the office furniture market. You know, sometimes Crib 5 is too much. Don't be put off by the fact that we can engineer these products to suit your end use.
Should we go to a completely different thing now?
Okay.
So how about Lustre?
Okay.
Lustre being completely different from the perspective that I think you've got a hanger up there. Amy, you may want to flash this up on Fabric Hub. So Lustre is different from the perspective that we've said. This is one of the ones you would probably use more in a hospitality style setting, probably less in a care setting. And we might be wrong. You might say, actually, I have a care home where this is perfect. In which case we can finish it, as we have explained, to the 08 finish. We can make it stain resist, waterproof and all the rest. Yeah. But as standard, we have instead chosen to make it the Crib 5 version, plus stain resist, or the cigarette match plus stain resist.
Yeah. So this goes back to our brands where you've got the DuraCare and the DuraCare Plus. You know, don't get me wrong, yes, antimicrobial waterproof is a necessity in certain environments, but in some it's just not needed. And if it's not needed, then we won't engineer it that way. We'll give you options for both.
Yeah.
And sometimes the fabric actually, from a handle point of view and from an aesthetic point of view, sometimes over-engineering them, you take.
Yeah, you don't need the PU barrier. You gain in softness, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, Lustre is it's a beautiful crushed velvet. Basically, I think it really speaks to that fashion at the moment for combining matte and shine. You know, I think it's been a long time since shiny has been in fashion, but most places anyway. But this seems to be really in at the moment. Yep. You know, combination of matte and shine. Cool. Next, I'm going to pick out, because you've got it nearly to hand there, Steve. I'm going to talk about elegance. Elegance is a blockbuster. It's great. It's what's needed everywhere. It is a classic upholstery velvet. It's actually based off the same base fabric as our Sensation Velvet Blackout.
Yep.
So this particular article is available in a Crib 5 finish and also the Cigar Match one. This one isn't stain resist, just to bear in mind, okay? It's got a slightly longer pile than some other articles there, so it's harder to maintain the stain resist.
Yeah. So going back to what we go through the binder with Deluxe, if you do want a stain resistant velvet, we've got one. Deluxe is 100,000 on the Martindale and stain resistant, but you do get a shorter pile. It's not as. And two
different looks as well. I'd say this one's a bit more lustrous and Deluxe is a bit more cotton, a bit more matte.
Absolutely, and don't forget, if you're manufacturing chairs, you know, these days there's so many different looks to a chair where you might have a velvet on the back, on the sides, and you might on your seats and your armrests, you might have a completely different fabric in terms of durability. So there's all sorts of different options in terms of.
I think the thing with the velvet is there is a velvet in practically every project nowadays somewhere.
It was surprising, actually. Yeah. I think a couple of years ago I would have argued that velvet didn't really have a place, but now all of a sudden it's gone bonkers. Yeah. I mean, we're still hearing linen look all the time, but at the same time we've got this alongside it. And the colour palette is huge. Yeah. You know, huge choice of colours.
One of the things we've had commented on quite often is the yellow that people struggle to find elsewhere. It's a really yellow, isn't it?
It is.
So what's really nice as well, and here we are learning, is that in upholstery, colour is used. In drapery, everybody's on bloody silver grey. Beige and silver grey.
Neutral colours.
But here people will buy dual colours. They'll buy a bright red, they'll buy purples. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Much more exciting.
Even part of the same project, you can be using a multitude of different fabrics and different colours. You know, the designers get really, really creative with the chairs and the sofas in different settings, whether in lobbies, whether in restaurants, whether in bedrooms. So we've got our colour palette tailored accordingly.
I'm going to go the opposite direction now. Okay. Because I did just touch on linen look, and although we're excited that not everything is linen look nowadays, we can't deny that it is an important thing in many different settings. And certainly, I think in certain markets, let's say, for instance, in Asia, certainly in warmer markets, it may be that a velvet looks cloying, right? That you do want something that looks like a natural texture. So we've got a few different articles in the new ranges that kind of tend towards the matte, the more natural. So Eclipse is one that we could talk about first, perhaps. This one's really matte. I think it's the green one there.
This one,
it is, so this is a really matte texture. Like the other ones that we discussed at the start, this is available in the 08 Crib 5 waterproof, stain resist and antimicrobial version if you want it that way. But you also had the version that is more kind of hospitality oriented, more export oriented, and again, very, very price aggressive. The other thing that we haven't really mentioned here yet, and there's a major omission on our part, is stock. It's a really important point, right? We are not a make-to-order mill. We keep, at the very least, the base fabric in significant stock. We also keep a lot of finished stock as well. Now, for the upholsteries, because we have multiple different versions, we often keep only one particular version of stock for cut length. Although there's been a turnaround recently to be a bit more inclusive there.
Yeah, as we've got better at it and as we've built a little bit more confidence in terms of our selling of this fabric and the use of this fabric worldwide, I think we've started to put different options into stock, and at a bare minimum, we'll always be able to service an MUR. Whether it's, you know, if you're doing a project, doing mock-up rooms, we'll always have sampling things available for your moon boards. But now we're starting to really stock our kind of 0806 versions. So that we can service those smaller orders. And I think behind the scenes, because of the way that we work, because of the manufacturing, because of the production in the UK, we've generally got 500 to 1,000 meters of base cloth around us on each colour and each texture at any one time.
So even if we are manufacturing to order, that lead time is significantly shorter than it will get elsewhere.
Yeah, and a perfect example, we've done a project recently where, you know, because of we talked about Brexit and the difficulties in terms of the logistics around the world at the minute, because we sat on those stocks, because we have that UK production, we turned the project around within 3 or 4 weeks for a customer that was having to wait 12 to 14 weeks for their original choice. And it's, you know, the fact that we can do that, it's just a huge plus point to help these guys out.
Especially this year, where I think that we're, you know, if and when projects go ahead, they'll probably go ahead at short notice and low budget. So hopefully we have the right setup for you there. The other one I want to talk about, so we've seen Eclipse. Eclipse really is matte. Inspire is, I guess, the slightly shinier, the slightly more luxy version of it. It includes a metallic yarn in there as well. So it is still predominantly matte. It is still predominantly a matte texture, but with a little bit of shine in it. The colorways are broadly similar. You know, we've got a lot of more pastel colors. We've got, many of the ranges include something called sea glass, which is a really nice cool grey / green. But then we've got some really hot colors as well.
I think that's the point to remember about these linen look and these textures that we have. They're all commercial fabrics, they're commercial colors and textures. But I think between them all, we generally mix the colors up. So they might not have a huge color palette that we have in Elegance because it's a velvet. But between them, they'll generally have the colors to suit what you're looking for.
And if not, then it's custom printing time, and we'll talk to you about that in just a minute. Finally, in the kind of more linen textured articles, I'm going to show you Ultima. I think this probably lies between, difficult to define, between a linen and a chenille. In fact, this is very matte. It's a much heavier texture, if you like. This is the newest one in the range at present. Do you have photos to show of that one, Amy? Which one? Ultima. So this has got, again, this is a really matte look, and one that I think can be made to look extremely expensive, in fact.
It can.
And again, available in the stain resist, waterproof, antimicrobial and FR, or in the FR and stain resist only version for price reasons. So I think the next one that kind of naturally leads from Ultima is Virtue. This is a chenille. I think you've got it just there, Steve. The one's sticking out. That's the one. So this is a soft chenille. Very, I guess from a distance, really plain. Very universal article.
It's been extremely popular, this one, and I think it's because of its colour palette. When you compare it, you know, there's more pastel colours in here.
We compared that to Meridian, didn't we? Let me show you Meridian. So Meridian's basically it's a semi-plane, but the colours here are a bit brighter, where Virtue's a little bit more pastel, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But you know, these are, I can imagine them in any settings. I can imagine this in a corporate setting, even on office chairs.
100%.
You could see it in a lobby. You could see it in a care home. There's really nowhere that these wouldn't go.
More recently, I think we've done divan bases in these. We've done headboards in Virtue. We've done chairs. So it's very universal upholstery fabric.
To give you an idea, we talked about high Martindale and Weizenbeek ratings. Meridian here has more than 100,000 in both. We actually stop at 100,000. There are some brands that will continue to 250,000. We kind of don't see the point. Like, what are you doing to your chair?
I think if you explain, there was a running joke, I think, at one point where I think there was a company that sold vinyls and they were kind of competing with each other. And I think, a Martindale test is done until 3 threads break, basically. So if you're using a fabric like this, then eventually 100,000 of the 3 threads are going to break. But if you do that rub test on a vinyl, you've got to get to the threads first.
Yeah.
So there was this competition, 250,000, 500,000, million rubs. Doesn't matter. The aesthetics of the fabric would be ruined.
I don't think there can possibly be enough bums on seats to ruin anyway.
Yeah. So don't let it mislead you either in terms of fabrics like that. I think when we stop at 100,000, because to be honest with you,
that is sufficient.
That's sufficient.
And more than sufficient by a long way. So those are the plain semi-plains, if you like. I give you that.
Schönen Dank.
And then I think the last one that we're left with that we haven't discussed out of those plains in the box is Elite. Elite is a really nice one, actually. Very different. It's a tufted article. It's only in a limited number of colorways, but this, I think some of our photography is done on banquettes and footstools and things like that. It looks really smart.
Yeah.
It's got multiple colors in it. A lot of them have got a dark or a light background as well.
Yeah.
So most of these are yarn dye articles, by the way, which just gives them extra depth. It means you can match them with more different things in the room as well.
It's another DuraCare Plus product. You can use this in this more severest of settings, but yet you've got
looks really high end,
really decorative product.
Yeah, and I mean there's some really nice neutrals in this. You've got some light greys teamed with kind of oatmeal brown. You've got
citrine in there as well.
Citrine is actually a really cool one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this is a really lovely article.
Yep.
Last thing in the box is a bit of a tease at something that we've got upcoming.
Not got to the sweets yet.
Oh yeah, and there are sweeties in there as well, which we'll enjoy afterwards. And a pen, brand new pen. So this is a sample of our design called Foliage on Luxor velvet, which actually is the same velvet that I'm sitting on at the moment.
Yeah.
This is a base cloth that is available in 2 different finishes as well.
Yeah.
So Steve already mentioned we previously had 2 base cloths that were DuraCare Plus, if you like. So they were waterproof and stain resist, antimicrobial and FR. But Luxor we chose because it's just so nice.
Just so soft. So
just
I think,
so lovely.
Again, it's another example of the opportunity that we have with the way that we manage the upholstery on the retail side. We've got another fabric that we supply into those markets, but it gives us a great
sealskin. It's so nice.
Absolutely beautiful.
So you can have it crib 5 or you can have it Sig and Match, basically.
Yeah.
Or any of the European, American and Marine standards that we already mentioned to you. And what we're going to start doing, actually, we're going to do a little experiment and put out some sampling with pre-selected designs that we think are really commercial. So we've been seeing an awful lot of these kind of jungle type foliage designs, darker colors.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring out some cards with that and with some other nice abstract designs on and see how you like them, basically.
Yeah.
If you don't go for them, you've got 1,001 custom designs you can go for.
You can. I think what I was going to say then, interrupted for you in bad form, is that our design team, if you've done any of our webinars over the past couple of months, you might have met Demi and Lise. They're constantly working on new designs and new design trends. And with our inspirational side of what we do in terms of our prints and our bespoke offering, it's kind of endless in terms of the opportunity.
So in fact, we'll touch on that in just a minute. We do already have a bank of designs, loads and loads of different designs broken down into categories for you. But actually, most often when we do custom print, it is from the ground up custom print, where either you already have a design in mind or you've got a vague idea. And we have to put it into practice for you. And I would definitely recommend Luxor as being a base that you use for that.
If you're watching this and you're familiar with Edmund already and you're just getting a bit of a catch up and you've not heard us mention Luxor base cloth before,
it's on the cards now.
It's on the cards now, and it may be that you've got an old one when you get it replaced. Just get in touch.
Yeah. So we did mention that we were going to touch on sustainability. This as kind of a broader talk, I guess, about the business as a whole and what we're doing, because it's such a hot topic.
It is. I think we've exhausted how much we could talk about our upholstery.
Oh, no.
I don't know. Not Fiona,
I could people longer.
Fiona, yeah, absolutely. I think sustainability is more, and again, it's not a product. It's not a one product thing. It's a business wide effort, I think, and that's kind of where we're going with this, is to talk to you about sustainability and what Edmund are doing at the minute.
The first point that you'll see on there refers to renewable fibres. And Stephen, you already talked about this, didn't you? That natural fibres can be great, it can be a good solution, and we use it in some cases. I mean, for instance, a lot of our linings are cotton, but it isn't always the most sustainable solution, in fact. And, you know, as we've touched on, we use polyester for an awful lot of our fabrics. From the perspective of, you know, it has longevity because it, you know, has high abrasion results, it has good colour fastness, it's something you will not have to throw away for a very long time. That's the first important point. Absolutely,
and there's so many different things that you can do with these fabrics technically now, and there's things on, you know, dim-out fabrics or shears or woven fabrics, so many of them now are Ecotech Standard 100 approved or certified. Yeah. And again, when we talk about our certificates, and I'll talk to you about a separate URL that's available to you in just a second, and you can download these certificates with confidence to know that these things are in hand with Edmund Bell. And you know, we have a whole team of technologists at Edmund Bell, and we've got a fabric technologist, and there's a young lady called Jess who's hiding behind the camera at the minute, who's been brought in to kind of take that even further.
Yeah. I think one thing that we haven't touched on in the slide, but I think is a favourite topic, and actually a really fun way that you guys dealt with it in marketing, was to point out that over a period of a year, I think we saved 3 blue whales worth of, was it a blue whale or, come on, what was it? Was it 3 blue whales?
Yeah,
it was 3 blue whales worth of weight in terms of carbon footprint. I like that.
That's huge.
Yeah, because we are in fact doing all the coating and finishing here in the UK. That's the,
so I'm laughing at myself. I just said 3 blue whales are huge. Obviously, they are. And I think it's really important, though. You know, we
sounds like a new football.
We talk about our kind of, you know, our UK production, and it has such a huge impact in terms of our carbon footprint, in terms of what we're importing. You know, our decorative blackouts are all finished here. Our commodity blackouts are nearly to a point where they're all finished here. Yeah. You know, that takes 2/3 of the weight.
Or even more, indeed. Yeah.
I'm being conservative, you know. So when we're flying in tens of thousands of meters annually, you take 2/3 of that weight away, and your carbon footprint has been decimated. So it's something that we're going to do more work around, so that we can actually quantify that to you as customers. But that's something.
But yeah, it's already, if you like, all of these. It really does pertain to the upholsteries because they're all UK finished. So it's definitely worth bearing in mind. So we've touched on, I think you just talked about another URL.
I tried not to mention it, I knew it was coming.
So I'm sure you'll have come across the normal website, www.edmundbell.com, in the past. We now have a secondary website that I guess is more of a multimedia portal.
It is. It's something that we started off using during the period that we've just all gone through, the last kind of 12, 14 months, where we needed something to engage with customers to kind of get our fabrics across, get some room shot images across, certification, all this kind of thing. But actually what it's become is, now that hopefully, touch wood, certainly things are starting to get better, then it's a tool for you guys to use, as well as our website, which you currently can jump onto at any time.
So it's fabric-hub.com. You can create your own login, so just use your own email address, your own password as you like. You'll be given access, and on there you can get videos of all the different products. You can get past webinars as well. You will get all the thumbnails and colorways. Yep. You'll get imagery from room shots, so you can see what the fabric looks like in situ.
So if you're doing digital mood boards, you can download all of these things. You can create your own collections by project, so they can drag and almost drag and drop everything in. You can share them with colleagues. You can share them with us even.
You can add in tech specs and certifications. So it's a really handy process.
So how many times have you guys run up a company like us and asked for FR certificates?
Just go and have a look.
It's there.
Yeah.
Right, a click of a button, you can drop it. You know, there's nothing to hide from our perspective. It's all there for you, transparent. And it's there to make your job easier, we hope.
There is actually a section of Fabric Hub called Bespoke Print. So in the print section, there's also Bespoke Print or Fabric print lab.
Print lab, yeah.
And in there you can find a gallery of all the pre-existing custom designs as well. So that's a good place to get some inspiration.
So yeah, so Demi and Lisa constantly putting new designs in there, whether it's geometric, abstract, jungle themed, whatever it is you're looking for, you'll find inspiration within that. And I think if you do sign up for Fabric Hub, and we've briefly skirted through it here, if you want us to talk you through it, there is a guide within it that tells you how to use it. If you're still struggling, please get in touch and we'll talk you through it quite happily.
So why should you want to remember us when you next have an upholstery project, or indeed any contract project? There are multifarious reasons, aren't there, Stephen?
We've mentioned a few, have we not?
Yeah, I think we have probably drilled it home by now, but just to remind you all, you've seen already, you know, we have five binders nowadays. If you're not au fait with the entirety of the range, it's definitely worth getting in touch with your regular representative, because they'll be able to fill you in about the light control, the weave, the print, the upholstery, and the workroom articles that we have to offer.
Yeah, and I think the one thing for you to take away, whether it's upholstery or drapery that we're talking to you about, whether it's hospitality, healthcare, leisure, no matter, you know, even in retail, you know, if you're looking for something that has these technical finishes, technical FR standards, whether they can be washed, whether they can be, you know, Ecotech standard 100, wide, narrow width goods, all of these different things. If
you want to be sure that those things have already been taken into account by the time you come to the goods, then we're a good place.
Then that's why you remember Edmund Bell.
Yeah. Also, of course, we've already touched on the fact that our pricing is important. Being mill direct, I think, is, I mean, that in itself mostly says it. Yeah. I think we're often worried about mentioning UK origin because people think it will be expensive, but it's not the way it is.
No, I think we don't mention it not just from a money saving point of view. Yeah. We mention it because of the stock availability, because of the sustainability side of things. Yeah. The fact that it saves you money is just a prerequisite. Maybe we've got a bit complacent, and that's the fact that we don't shout about it enough. We shout it now, aren't we? So, yeah. So, want to find out any more? Then it's a good place to start would be the website, as we mentioned. Yep. So that's www.edmundbell.com. And of course, as we mentioned before, Fabric Hub, which is fabric-hub.com. And of course, you can get in touch with us by the usual means. You know, actually, listen, we've all been working electronically, emails, virtual meetings, webinars. You're missing people. Call, please call. It's nice to talk to people. Please call me. That's like me. I look like that dog, don't I? Please call. So, are there any questions for us this time around, Adam? There's none put in there. Right. Okay. So people can email them in now. Perfect. If you do have any questions, then by all means send an email to sales at Edmund Bell, marketing at Edmund Bell, whichever you fancy, and we will get back to you. Thank you very much, and have a lovely afternoon. Thanks for listening.